I just got back from a trip from Texas. And in Texas, I was trying out the van. You know, I don't have much going on in here. I don't even have my shower fully installed, but I went for a week-long trip. And I wrote down some things that I thought would be nice, like having a laundry basket, definitely need a pantry, a trash can, a little vanity with like a mirror on it, you know, to brush your teeth and do your morning routines, whatever. And at night, when I was sleeping in the van, I had one fan blowing on me because my bed was down there, and one fan blowing out, so it was recirculating the air. And I don't know where I read it, but I read it somewhere where they said having two fans in here doing just that was plenty to keep the van cool. And I don't really have any insulation on a majority of my walls, so maybe that could be the issue, but it was so hot that it was hard to sleep. So I went ahead and I invested in a Dometic air conditioner. So this AC, it wasn't cheap, but I feel confident in this particular unit just because the reviews were phenomenal and everybody seemed to like this one. Ease of install, and because I already have my solar panels in place where they're gonna go, I only had like so much space in the rear of the van to put an AC unit, and this one fit perfectly. So I will be installing this unit. Now, I didn't do it initially because of the cost, and that's why I chose the two fan solution. But if you're staying anywhere that's above 80 degrees, I mean, I'm used to camping. I can camp in 80 degrees. It's fine by me. But Texas was not just 80 degrees. It was like 90 degrees at night, 100% humidity. So it was muggy. It was hot. Just not comfortable. So I invested in an AC. Because I'm not doing this just to have a tent on wheels, you know. I want to have like luxury, a place that I can technically be a mini home. So I want all the comforts. I got a shower, I got a bed, I'm gonna have a cooking station, refrigerator, I got an AC. So let's get installing that today. So I already took off my ceiling, and I put a wooden strut in the center, and I took that off as well. I think having this AC is actually going to help with this situation that I have going on over here. So with this fan, I got an adapter for the roof. It has like contours in the bottom of it, and it sits right in the middle perfectly. So the fan has a place that'll there's no like gaps that you have to fill with like sealant. It just contours to the roof nicely, so you can have a nice even caulk gap with no leakage. But that was the only place the fan could go, and it's interfering with my shower, and I tried to figure out a way to cover up this fan to shower transition right here, and the AC will definitely help, because the hole is supposed to be 19 inches that I cut, but the fan is only 14 inches. So the fan, or the AC unit itself, will come down about here, and it'll give me some space over here to finish up this shower edge, which will clean it up very nice. And I don't think I have to I mean, I got to cut the hole bigger, but I don't think I'm going to have to move the hole and cover up this little sliver of hole, if that makes sense. So I'm a little nervous about doing this today because it's overcast. It kind of looks like it might rain, but it's cool outside and it's not 115 degrees like it's been every single day when it's clear. So now's the perfect day to be on the roof for long periods of time. I just don't want it to start raining. I got a big hole in my roof. And the weather app is no help because it tells me it's not going to rain, but it might rain, but it's not going to rain, but it might rain, and the clouds are coming that it might rain, but it's not going to rain. So should we just go for it? So I got a razor blade and a putty knife. I think I'm just going to remove the fan. Those screws that just hold it in, there's just 4, 2 on each side. So I'm going to remove those, take the fan off, and then try to get as much of this lap sealant off as possible, and just see where I am with the weather. And if it starts to rain, I'll just put the fan back on and then just wait a little bit longer. So slow and steady wins the race. And I went ahead and disconnected those wires. So I just pulled it out. Put this on pretty good. It's been real hard to just get these little crowbars started, but once I pull up one, then I work my way around and just alternating them just to get up all this caulk. So I put caulk on the bottom of it, and then my little spacer doodad, and then some butyl tape, then the screws, and then the lap sealant. So a lot of layers in there of sealant. I mean, it never leaked. I'm gonna do the same type of process, and I'll clean up this spacer and maybe use it on a future van build. Who knows? Well, that's all taken care of, and I'm gonna clean this up. And now you can see why it's important to paint all your exposed edges. So don't skip that step. These screw holes weren't pre-drilled, so I just drilled straight through this thing, thinking that it would just seal that up. But I think what's necessary, if you do use these fans, because I don't think the new AC unit will need screws, but drill your holes, screw down what you need to screw, undo it, and then paint all the holes. That way you don't get any rust spots like that and then cause yourself some problems in the future. So here I've got my AC unit upside down, and I needed to measure the distance between this and the front, because the hole that I have on the van is 14 inches, and the hole required for this AC is supposed to be 19 by 15 and a half. But if I cut 1.5 inches off of the hole that's already there, from the top of the hole to the solar panel on the van is exactly 5 inches. So this thing and this width on this is also exactly 5 inches. So when this is in that hole, it probably will touch the solar panel. So I'm going to cut the hole 16 inches or 16.5 inches, an inch oversized, to give me a little bit of gap between my solar panel and the front of this unit. And I think really you could cut the hole as big as you want, up to like 30 inches, because this gives you a lot of surface area. And you have to just be cautious of this thing, which sticks out about 3-4 inches, and you don't want to kink that at all. So that's why it tells you to cut it 19 inches from side to side, just so you have space to run your wires through. So here is my pretty straight edge I initially cut for my fan hole, and I'm going to mark it 16.5 ish, and that will be my mark. And from this edge, I don't know why it keeps, I guess I keep messing up the focus, but in this way I'm going to mark 19 inches. If you remember my fan install, you remember I attached some plastic to cover up my hole to catch all my little metal shavings so they don't go all over the van. Whoops, a little too shaky for the phone to be on the roof. So I'm going to finish that without showing you. So this AC unit came with two different types of sealers, like little rubber gaskets. Came with this one, it's about a 1/2 inch thick. And then this one, which is about a 1.5 inch thick. And I'm going to use this one just because the van ceiling has those little ribs in it where this can contour with, and then just because it's so thick, that depth will be squished down when I tighten the AC unit from the underside with this little square tubing with little squished ends. These sit on the ribs that are inside the van, and you bolt up through it and it'll pull that AC unit down to the ceiling, squishing this rubber gasket. And when it splices, you know, like that, you're gonna have to cut it to meet up. I'm gonna put some silicone in there and also around the inside and the outside, and maybe one on top as well to where the AC unit sits on a bead of silicone too, just the extra security of water sealing. But you want this splice to be in the back of the van, not the front where wind and rain can work its way into that little splice. And it keeps raining off and on. As soon as I cut the hole too big for the old fan to fit in there, it started raining. So I put a piece of cardboard up there just to keep water from going into my hole. So now we'll dry it off with some paper towels. I cleaned it up with some degreaser just to get all that grime and stuff that's on the roof just from driving around for so long. Then I'm gonna clean it up with a napkin, put this on there. As you can see, I cleaned it. Still a little bit of rust spots left around. Once I silicone it, I'm gonna go back in and spray paint everything. So now I'm gonna caulk this little area, and then I'm gonna caulk the inside and then the outside of the perimeter. See, there's still some gaps where those contours are, and I'm hoping once the AC sits on top of it and I squeeze it, it'll pull that down tight. But I'm also going to stick a whole bunch of silicone in there just to make sure. So before you install your AC unit, you do have to put in these little threaded nuts that are self-tapping. So the bolts will tap into that, and they got other configurations you can do, but I'm just going to do the recommended holes. And I did try to do it by hand tight, but since these holes, I'm not sure if you can see it, they're not threaded. So when you're putting them in there, it's also threading it at the same time. So I'm going to use a drill. Be very careful drilling into plastic because you know, plastic is fragile, a drill is powerful. You don't want to crack it. Just go very slow, and as soon as you're flush with your face, that's good enough. Stop right there. See how difficult it would have been to hand do that. Once those are in, it's time to put it on the van. And it weighs about 80 pounds. So let's see how we can do this by ourselves. That was not easy. It's about 80 pounds. I had this ladder fully extended leaning against this with a towel. And then I put some cardboard on top of this. And I taped it around it. And then just slid it up. And I made it about halfway. And I just couldn't go anymore. Luckily my mom pulled in right at the last second. She got a ladder as I was holding it, and then we both just pushed it up onto the roof, and then I finagled it into place. That's difficult. You definitely need about 2 people to do this, unless you have some type of pulley system to help you lift it and put it up on the roof. I mean, once that sun came up, I mean, it just got hot. I don't want to climb up and down this ladder. Hey, Mike, can you hand me my drill? No, my drill. My drill. Come on, Mike, stop messing around. Now to put on our little braces that kind of pull the AC unit down and then sandwich it between the struts of the ceiling of the van. So I got my long bolts, locking washer, normal washer, then the strut, then a nut that when you tighten it to the AC unit and you get it where you want it, then you tighten the bolt the rest of the way just to hold this in place. And it just threads into those little brass looking threaded nuts that we just put up in there. So as you can see, there's a gap in there which will be fixed when I pull the unit down, but because these struts are as low as they are, when I put this up in there, I'm not sure if I can show you, but see, the bolt doesn't reach. So I put in the other bolts, which are these bolts that fit into the other threads that we put in there. And I didn't know that's what those were for, but it goes on that shroud that covers it all up. But because it's so big and bulky, I'm not going to use it. But I found a use by putting them in those holes, grabbing my hammer, pulling it down, and then attaching my other bolts to it. Just gives me a point to pull down on this. And you may see some caulk along this. I'm going to let that dry and peel it off, but when I was sliding it into position, that was really hard, by the way. I got caulk all over it, so it'll be cleaned up later. So I got it as tight as I want it to go. Now you just tighten the little nuts on top, and I'll get my little crescent wrench and really tighten it down. But look at this. I mean, I barely touch it, but I will touch these little vent movers. So keep that in mind. I'm 6 foot, 6'1" ish. So it's low. I mean, if you're shorter than that, it's fine. But that's another reason I didn't want to keep it up put it up in the front. Another reason was because it is an air conditioner, it might condensate, it might drip, and I don't want it dripping on me when I'm sleeping. So it's good being back here with all the tile floor and everything. So if it does drip, it's fine. But just keep that in mind, that it does come down a little bit low when you tighten it up. Would you look at that? Sun is shining, beautiful skies, fighting the rain the entire time. But I got caulk all over it, so I'm going to clean it up a little bit. And underneath it, you can see this little 1-inch gap all the way around, and that's for some airflow. That's pretty good. The caulk is, you can't see it, but the caulk is squeezing out pretty evenly all the way around, so when that dries, it'll be nice. I'm going to clean it up, but there you go. That is the AC unit installed. Next, we've got to put up the electrical. And would you look at that? There it is, fully installed. Very easy to do. I'm going to talk about the wiring, but right now I'm going to tell you just how I ran it. I mean, I just stuck it up as best I can up in the ceiling, going over the little holding brackets, going over my ceiling joist and going down through my wall and back up through the ceiling, coming down over here and going into my electrical. And the reason I did that is I didn't want to pass the wires over this ceiling joist, and that way when my ceiling goes up, it'll still be as flush as possible and conceals those wires pretty well. Don't even see it. So let me talk about the wiring configuration. So in this kit, I did get the RTX 2000, which was a 2000 watt AC cooling as opposed to the 1200 watt, which is the RTX 1000. And I just think it just had a little bit more power because I do have the longest wheelbase of Sprinter, and the price difference was, in comparison, not that much for, as you know, the top of the line. I mean, I think they have a 3000 too, but that was too powerful. I didn't need that one. So the wiring it came with, the instructions weren't super clear on how to wire it. It had a wiring diagram, but it did come with two different cables. This one was a thinner cable, which I initially assumed was for maybe a 24 volt system because you don't need as thick of a gauge wire for 24 volt as you do for 12 volt. And then it came with a thicker wire bundle, about 8 gauge. I don't know if you can see that, but that's how much thicker it is, about that compared to that. So it came with this one, and from best I can tell, I think this one is just for the 1000, and when you buy the wiring bundle you buy both together. So the clip that connected the AC unit to this wiring harness was the only clip that fit what I bought. So this little clip on this thinner one, there was nowhere to connect this. So I just connected that one and then ran the wires through the ceiling. And then I read somewhere that you can set this system up in 24 volts and 12 volts, but I'm not sure if I had to purchase a 24 volt specific system, because I did hook it up. I'll take you over here so you can see better. Here's the thicker gauge wire that it came with, just a positive and negative, and another smaller positive and negative. I gotta tie all this together. I initially plugged it into the 24 volt system. So here is my little inverter that turns it from 12, or converter that turns from 24 to 12 volt. So I ran it before the converter, going straight out of my batteries into my little negative terminal and my positive terminal, and I put them on there, and then it turned on, but it just said there was an error over voltage. So it was not in 24 volt configuration. So I took the wires off of those and then moved them past the converter and just tapped it in directly to the fuse box at the top negative and at the bottom positive. And I put on the little, I think this wire is for your battery indication. So you could set it up in the AC that it'll turn off if your battery bank gets to a certain low voltage and you don't want it to completely drain your batteries. You can use these wires, and that communicates to the AC that the batteries are insufficient to power it, so it'll just turn itself off. So in here is a little 80 amp fuse that just taps into the positive line, and then on this littler positive there's a 2 amp little fuse inside of this cartridge, and I just have it connected to the same place, right underneath the positive and then right underneath the negative. And that's pretty much it. That's how you connect it. Instructions weren't very clear, but this system works. And hold the power. Takes a second to start up, but now you hear it, and it immediately pushes out cold air. Oh, it's so nice. Alright, now that you got your AC all set up, let's take you through some of the settings. So you just hold the power button, it turns on. Right now I have it set to the lowest fan speed, just so you guys can hear me when it kicks on. And again, don't mind all this stuff. I'm going to get some acetone and clean up all this caulk that I got all over the place, because when I was sliding it in, I got caulk all over it. Alright, so this is your little menu indicator. Seems like it reset itself, so I'm going to reset that fan speed. Just take it down. Fan speed 1. Now, the little temperature indicator, you can set the temperature and it'll automatically shut off when your van reaches that temperature. Click it again, manual. And now you got boost mode, which will get the fan in high gear, compressor and AC on high gear, setting you to that mood. So now that I put it on boost, it ramps back up, and it's going to try to get the fan from that temperature. So next, if we can go back to this, you got auto, which will automatically keep it at that temperature, so it'll turn itself off and on but maintain that temperature, whatever you set it to. Again, I got to turn the fan speed down. You got your timer, so you can turn on the AC and set it to a timer. Fan, timer, temperature, manual. When we get back to manual, you can go boost and then eco mode. Eco mode is once you boosted it and your van's feeling good, put it on eco mode and it drains the least amount of power, keeping your van maintained at the temperature you set it to. And that is Van Go certified. Alright, that's how you install a Dometic RTX 2000 air conditioner in your Mercedes Sprinter van. That's it. Have anything else to say? Well, that's it. We'll see you later.